The rain began just minutes before Armand realized his life had already changed. He stood outside the glass doors of the office building, watching employees rush past him with umbrellas, laughter, and ordinary worries. Inside, on the 5th floor, a meeting was ending without him, a meeting he had spent 5 years preparing for. His phone vibrated again in his hand, but he already knew the message before opening it. "I'm sorry. The board has made its decision." The message came from Samir, his business partner, his closest friend since university, and the one person Armand trusted more than anyone. Armand stared at the words until they blurred, not from rain, but from disbelief. Just that morning, Samir had promised everything was secure. Together, they had built the company from nothing. Long nights, borrowed money, dreams whispered over cheap tea. And now Armand was standing outside while his own company moved forward without him. Inside the building, lights flickered as silhouettes gathered near the conference room. Armand walked in slowly, his shoes leaving wet prints on the marble floor. The receptionist avoided eye contact. That was the first sign something was truly wrong. When the elevator opened, silence followed him upward. On the 5th floor, laughter stopped as soon as he stepped out. Conversations died mid-sentence. His chest tightened. He saw Samir standing near the glass wall, surrounded by board members. Samir looked polished, confident, dressed in the suit Armand had helped him choose for their big day. When their eyes met, Samir's smile faded into something rehearsed, guilt hidden beneath professionalism. The announcement came quickly. The board had voted to restructure leadership. Investors wanted stability, they said. They believed Armand was too emotional, too risky for expansion. Samir would become sole CEO. Armand's shares had been legally diluted during a recent funding agreement he had trusted Samir to manage. The documents carried Armand's digital signature papers. He remembered approving late at night without suspicion. Samir explained calmly that it was necessary for growth. He spoke like a stranger explaining weather patterns, not betrayal. Armand listened without interrupting because the truth arrived slowly, piece by piece, like cold water filling a room. His best friend had planned this for months. Someone handed Armand an envelope containing severance terms. Security waited discreetly near the hallway. The humiliation burned deeper than anger. Employees he had hired avoided looking at him. A junior developer whispered, "I thought you knew." That sentence echoed louder than anything else. Armand walked back to his office, the space still filled with sketches and ideas pinned to the walls. A photo of him and Samir from their early days sat beside the computer, two young men smiling beside a borrowed laptop. Armand picked it up, studying the faces of people who believed success would never divide them. For a moment, he wondered if he had misunderstood everything. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Samir had been forced into this decision. But when Samir entered the office, closing the door carefully behind him, the truth settled permanently. "I didn't want it to happen like this," Samir said quietly. Armand waited. "The investors trust me more. They think you hesitate too much. I had to choose what was best for the company." "For the company," Armand repeated, his voice steady despite the storm building inside him. Samir nodded, relief appearing as if he expected. "Understanding. You'll land on your feet. You're talented. This isn't personal." Those words shattered whatever hope remained. Not personal. 5 years of friendship reduced to strategy. Armand realized Samir had already justified everything to himself. In Samir's mind, betrayal was simply leadership. Armand left without arguing. Anger would have made him look weak, and something inside him refused to give Samir that satisfaction. Outside, the rain had turned heavier, soaking the streets in. Silver reflections. He walked for hours without direction, replaying memories, shared meals, promises, nights spent planning the future. Every memory now carried a hidden meaning. Every smile felt rehearsed. The pain was not loud, was quiet and constant, like pressure behind his ribs. At home, the apartment felt unfamiliar. The company had consumed so much of his life that silence felt unnatural. He opened his laptop and reread old emails, searching for the moment things changed. Slowly, he noticed patterns, meetings scheduled without him, decisions finalized before discussions, investors communicating directly with Samir. The betrayal was not sudden. It had been built carefully, step by step, while Armin trusted blindly. Sleep did not come that night. Instead, a question formed in his mind. Why? Not just why Samir betrayed him, but why Arman never saw it coming. He realized he had believed loyalty was permanent. Samir, however, believed success required sacrifice, even friendship. The next morning, news articles announced the leadership change. Headlines praised Samir's bold vision. Arman's name appeared only briefly, described as a co-founder stepping aside. Strangers commented online, speculating about incompetence and failure. Each sentence rewrote his story without his voice. That hurt more than losing money or position. His identity had been erased. Days passed in slow motion. Calls from acquaintances came filled with polite sympathy that sounded like curiosity. Some suggested legal action, but lawyers explained the contracts were airtight. Samir had anticipated everything. There was no dramatic fight left to win, only acceptance. Yet acceptance never arrived. Instead, Arman began noticing something else growing beneath the pain: clarity. Betrayal stripped away illusion. For the first time in years, he saw Samir not as a friend, but as a strategist who valued outcomes above people. And Arman realized something unsettling. He knew Samir better than anyone else did. He understood his habits, fears, ambitions, and weaknesses. Knowledge that once built friendship now felt like a weapon waiting to be used out. One evening, Arman visited a small cafe where he and Samir had first planned their company. The owner recognized him and offered tea without asking questions. Sitting there, Arman remembered their early conversations about fairness, about building something honest. He wondered when those ideals disappeared. Maybe success had revealed who Samir always was, or maybe pressure had changed him. The thought complicated Arman's anger. If Samir truly believed he saved the company, was he a villain or simply someone who chose ambition over loyalty? That question haunted Arman because it forced him to confront himself. What would he have done if roles were reversed? He wanted to believe he would never betray a friend. Yet certainty felt fragile now. As weeks passed, Arman's routine shifted. He woke early, read industry reports, and watched the company from a distance. Samir appeared frequently in interviews, confident and admired. Investors praised rapid expansion plans Arman himself had designed. Seeing his ideas presented without acknowledgement ignited something sharper than sadness. It was not jealousy. It was injustice. One night, while scrolling through company updates, Arman noticed a small detail others ignored. Samir had accelerated a risky partnership Arman had previously rejected due to ethical concerns. The decision promised fast profit but carried hidden dangers if mismanaged. Arman knew every flaw because he had studied it for months. Samir, eager to prove bold leadership, was walking directly into uncertainty. For the first time since the betrayal, Arman felt purpose return. The thought arrived quietly. I could expose this. He imagined revealing the risks publicly, showing investors the truth, forcing accountability. It would not require lies, only information. Justice, he told himself, not revenge. Yet even as he framed it that way, he sensed the deeper motivation beneath. He wanted Samir to feel what he had felt: helplessness, humiliation, loss. The realization frightened him. Revenge had entered his thoughts without permission. Arman closed the laptop and stared at his reflection in the dark screen. He barely recognized the man looking back, calmer, colder, more careful. Betrayal had changed how he measured trust. The world no longer seemed divided between friends and strangers, only between those who protected themselves and those who didn't. He began writing notes, Not plans exactly, just observations. Patterns in Samir's decisions. Investor expectations. Public perception. Each detail formed a puzzle. He told himself he was simply understanding the situation. But deep down, he knew he was preparing. Despite everything, memories still interrupted him. Laughter, shared support during difficult times. The brotherhood they once claimed. Memories slowed his anger, forcing him to question whether revenge would restore anything or only destroy what little remained of who he used to be. Late one night, Armand walked along the riverbank, listening to water move steadily in the darkness. He realized revenge was not a single act but a path. Once chosen, it would shape every decision afterward. The betrayal had taken his career, his friendship, and his sense of certainty. Revenge promised control, but at what cost? He stood there, until dawn colored the sky pale gold. For the first time since losing everything, he admitted the truth aloud. He wanted justice. But part of him also wanted Samir to suffer. Accepting that desire felt like crossing an invisible line. Armand stopped thinking like a victim the moment he understood patience could be stronger than anger. Weeks passed, and while the world believed he had disappeared after losing the company, he quietly rebuilt his routine with purpose. Every morning began with research, every evening ended with reflection. He watched interviews, studied financial reports, and followed every public move Samir made. The company was growing fast, faster than Armand had ever allowed, and the media praised Samir as a fearless leader. But Armand noticed what others missed: rushed decisions, overconfident promises, and partnerships built on fragile trust. Samir was trying to prove he alone deserved success, and in doing so, he was ignoring caution. Armand never rushed. Remembered how Samir used to think. Admiration mattered to him more than stability. Praise pushed him forward. Doubt made him reckless. Understanding this gave Armand an advantage that felt both powerful and unsettling. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was predicting. Still, each discovery brought mixed emotions. Part of him admired Samir's confidence. Another part felt the sting of being replaced so icily. One afternoon, Armand received a call from Sana, a former colleague who had quietly resigned from the company. They met at a quiet cafe far from the business district. Sana looked tired, but relieved to speak freely. She explained how pressure inside the company had changed. Employees worked longer hours, investors demanded faster results, and decisions were made without discussion. Samir rarely listened anymore. He believed success justified every risk. Sana didn't speak with anger. She sounded disappointed. Hearing this complicated Armand's feelings further. Samir was not celebrating victory. He was struggling to maintain it. As Sana spoke, Armand realized something important. Revenge did not need destruction. Truth alone could change everything. The risky partnership Samir had approved was beginning to show cracks. Delays, hidden costs, and unrealistic projections threatened the company's future. Armand still had documents from his earlier research proving those risks. If revealed publicly, they would raise serious questions about leadership decisions. Investors would demand explanations. Samir would face the same helpless scrutiny Armand once endured. That night, Armand opened a folder he had avoided for weeks. Inside were timelines, emails, and analysis, evidence gathered carefully but never used. He stared at the files for a long time, feeling the weight of choice pressing on him. Publishing the truth would not be illegal or dishonest. Yet he knew. His motivation was not entirely pure. He wanted balance restored. He wanted Samir to understand betrayal from the other side. He began drafting an anonymous industry report outlining the partnership's risks. The words came easily, clear, and professional. No insults, no accusations, only facts supported by data. Writing it felt strangely calming, as if he were reclaiming control over his own story. Still, doubt followed every sentence. Would exposing the truth protect employees and investors, or would it simply satisfy his wounded pride? Memories returned, unexpectedly. Nights when Samir had supported him during personal struggles. Moments of laughter that once felt unbreakable. Armin paused, realizing revenge was slowly changing how he remembered the past. Good memories felt distant, replaced by calculation. He wondered if this transformation was the real cost of betrayal. Days later, news broke that the company's partnership faced delays. Social media filled with speculation. Investors grew cautious. Arman watched silently, knowing his report could accelerate the pressure. His finger hovered over the send button more than once. Each time he hesitated. The power to act felt heavier than he imagined. Revenge was no longer an emotional dream. It was a real consequence waiting to unfold. One evening, while walking through a crowded market, Arman overheard two young entrepreneurs discussing Samir with admiration. They spoke about courage, ambition, and leadership. Listening to them, Arman felt an unexpected realization. People still saw hope in the company he helped create. Destroying Samir's reputation might also damage something larger than personal. Justice. Innocent employees, dreamers like his younger self, could suffer from the fallout. The thought unsettled him deeply. Revenge suddenly felt less like justice and more like a chain reaction he could not fully control. That night, Samir appeared on television during a live interview. He looked confident but tired, answering difficult questions about recent challenges. For a brief moment, his expression faltered, revealing exhaustion beneath the success. Armin recognized it instantly, the same pressure they once shared together. Watching him struggle stirred an emotion Armin did not expect: empathy. He closed the laptop and sat in silence. The plan he had built so carefully now felt uncertain. He had imagined revenge bringing relief, yet instead it filled him with heavier questions. Was he trying to correct a wrong, or was he becoming someone shaped entirely by pain? Arman reopened the report one last time. The document represented months of quiet preparation, a precise path toward revenge without violence or cruelty. All it required was one decision. His heart beat steadily as he read the final paragraph, outlining consequences that could reshape the company's future. Outside, the city lights flickered through the window, reflecting like countless choices, waiting to be made. Armin realized the real battle was no longer between him and Samir. It was within himself, between the man who wanted fairness and the man who wanted payback, with the cursor blinking at the end of the document. Arman understood that the next action would define not only Samir's fate, but his own. The cursor blinked on the screen like a ticking clock. Arman sat alone in his apartment. The report opened before him, the send button waiting. Months of anger, sleepless nights, and careful planning had led to this single moment. Outside, the city moved normally, unaware that one decision could change several lives at once. His chest felt heavy, not with fear, but with certainty that whatever he chose would follow him forever. He read the report again. Every line was factual, calm, and supported by evidence. It exposed the risks Samir had ignored and the consequences investors deserved to know. There were no lies, no exaggerations. Still, Armin knew truth could hurt as deeply as betrayal when used with the wrong intention. He imagined the headlines that would follow: the panic among employees, the collapse of trust inside the company they once built together. He also imagined Samir reading the report and realizing who truly understood those weaknesses. Even without a name attached, Samir would know. Arman closed his eyes and remembered the beginning: two young men sharing dreams in a small cafe, promising success without losing themselves. Somewhere along the way, ambition had replaced trust. Samir chose control. Arman chose loyalty. Now he stood at a crossroads where revenge looked almost identical to justice. His phone vibrated unexpectedly. A message appeared from an unknown number. "Can we talk?" Just once. A second later, another message followed. It's Samir. Armand stared at the screen, surprised by how calm he felt. After months of silence, Samir was reaching out. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to let consequences arrive without warning. Another part felt curious. He agreed to meet. They chose the same cafe where everything had once begun. When Armin arrived, Samir was already there, sitting by the window, looking older than before. Confidence still surrounded him, but exhaustion softened his posture. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence carried years of friendship and betrayal together. Samir finally broke it. "I know you're watching the company," he said quietly. "You always understood things before I did." Armand didn't deny it. Samir sighed, staring into his untouched tea. "I thought winning meant proving I could do it alone. Investors pushed me, and I convinced myself removing you was necessary. I told myself you'd slow us down." His voice faltered. "But I was wrong about what mattered." Hearing this didn't bring satisfaction. Instead, it felt strangely empty. Armin had imagined anger, arguments, maybe apologies filled with excuses. Instead, Samir sounded honest, almost defeated. "The company is struggling," Samir admitted. "I made decisions too fast, wanted to prove I deserved everything." He looked up. "I know I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to hear it from me." Kamun studied him carefully. For months he had seen Samir only as the antagonist, the man who stole his future. Now he saw someone carrying the weight of his own choices. The realization shifted something inside him. Revenge suddenly felt smaller than the pain, both of them. They spoke for a long time, not as partners or enemies, but as two people facing consequences. Samir never asked for help. He only admitted regret. That honesty unsettled Armand more than denial ever could. Walking away afterward, Armin felt the anger that fueled him for months slowly losing its grip. Back home, the report still waited. On the screen, the decision returned, sharper than before. Sending it would expose the truth and likely end Samir's leadership. Not sending it meant letting events unfold naturally, without his interference. For the first time, Armand asked himself a different question, not what Samir deserved, but who Armand wanted to become. He realized revenge had already taken enough from him. It had filled his days with calculation and replaced peace with obsession. Even if justified, revenge would keep him tied to the past. Letting go did not mean forgetting the betrayal. It meant refusing to let it define his future. Slowly, Armand moved the cursor and closed the document without sending it. The silence that followed felt unfamiliar, almost light. He expected regret, but none came. Instead, he felt space opening. Inside him, room for something new. Weeks later, news broke that the company publicly acknowledged challenges within the partnership. Investors demanded restructuring, and Samir stepped down temporarily to rebuild trust. The process was messy but honest. Armand watched from a distance, knowing events were unfolding without his intervention. Consequences arrived naturally shaped by choices rather than revenge. One evening, Armand returned to the riverbank where he had first admitted his desire for payback. The water moved steadily, unchanged by human conflicts. He realized justice and revenge were not the same. Revenge aimed to transfer pain. Justice allowed truth to surface on its own. By stepping away, he had chosen freedom over control. He began building something new, a smaller project focused on mentorship for young entrepreneurs, helping them avoid the mistakes he and Samir had made. Teaching others restored a sense of purpose he thought he had lost forever. The betrayal remained part of his story, but it no longer defined it. Sometimes he still wondered what would have happened if he had pressed send. Maybe he would have felt brief satisfaction. Maybe regret would have followed. But standing by the river, watching the city lights reflect across moving water, he understood the deeper lesson. Revenge promises closure, but often extends pain, while restraint creates the chance to heal. Armin walked home feeling lighter than he had in months. The past could not be changed, and betrayal could not be erased, but he had chosen who he would become afterward. And in that choice, he found something stronger than revenge, peace earned through letting go.